Hello everyone, in today's video we'll be learning about Flexbox in Tailwind CSS. This tutorial assumes you have some basics of CSS Flexbox, and as a result we'll only cover Flexbox in Tailwind CSS. I have listed in the description of this video the utilities that will be covered in this video in form of timestamps. This way you're able to skip to a specific one in case you don't want to learn all of them, but I may recommend you to cover all of them, of course. I'm also hoping to have this channel hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of next month, and it's my hope that you guys can make me achieve this. So without so much ado, let's get this started, shall we? Alright, so here I am already in Tailwind Play. So this will be lighting our code, and so without so much ado we get to our very first utilities, and that is the flex direction utilities. And this basically helps us to control the direction of flex items. We usually have the flex row reverse, flex call, and flex call reverse. So let us try to have this in practice. And so what I'll do is I'm just going to come and create a parent div here, and within it I'm going to have the items. So I'll just have the divs there, and maybe this one I can just come and call it this is container 1, and maybe we can style it a little bit. We can come and have it with a padding maybe of 2, just to make it have some breathing room. So and we can also give it some background color, so I can say BG green of 200. Yeah, and we have it like that. So I'm just going to duplicate this because maybe I may need 4 of these, so I duplicate it like that. And so I can just come and change the numbers here to make this 2, 3, and this 4. And I can also maybe change the color here. I'm just going to use the same color but different saturation. So I'm just maybe going to make this 800 so that we have that dark green, 600, and maybe this one we can give it 400. And so we have something like that. Sorry, we have a problem here, we need to fix this. So this one should be, yes, so that's what we expect. So as you can see, by default my items are laid out in vertical manner, but that's maybe what you want, but you may also want them to be in horizontal layout or positioned horizontally. So in that case you can just go to the parent div here and give it a class of flex. And as you can see now, the items will be positioned horizontally. Now talking about the flex direction, you can also come and talk about flex low. And as you can see, nothing changes because my items were already in a low. Now what this flex low will help you do is that it will now help you to have more control, so that now you can able to have the items in a reversed order. So like you can just come and say flex low, and then you talk of reverse. So the items now will be in the opposite side and starting in the reverse order. So we now start with container 4, 3, 2, and 1. And talking about the reverse, if we can have the items in a column, we just need to come and change it to flex call. So the items now will be in a call, and unlike the default vertical order, in this, if you have them with a flex call, you can even be able to have them in the reverse, so that now they are positioned vertically but in a reverse order. So those are the flex direction utilities, and that's how you can be able to use them. So the flex direction can be useful, especially when you are creating the navigation. Okay, so now the next utility that we'll be talking about is the flex lap. So the flex lap utility helps you to control how flex items lap. So to help us see this in practice, maybe I can try to add some more text here. So this is so now, as you can see, the contents in our items are now like even moving to 3 lines. Sometimes this is what you may want, and sometimes you may not want this to happen. So this is where now the flex items lab comes in. So in the primary container here, I can just come and talk of flex. I can just talk of flex lab, and as you can see now, what will happen is that now the items now will be in one line, and because of the limited space, they will be moved to new lines. So all of these cannot fit here, so we have now that appearing in 3 lines. And we can also talk of flex lab reverse. So this is normally what we call the wrap normally, so where the text will just be lapped normally in the normal order, but you may want them in the reverse, so that the very first container, the light green here, is the last one. So I can just come and talk of reverse, and that now will be reversed. So in some situations that is what you may want to achieve, and that's how you can be able to achieve that using the utility FlexLab. So we have the wrap normally utility, so we just talk of FlexLab, and we also have the FlexLab reverse, where the items now will be ordered in a reverse order. Okay, so let me just remove that, so we have less content. So I'm just going to come and maybe get rid of some content here. Yeah, so we have it back to normal like that. And now the next utility that I want us to talk about is the grow. And the grow allows a flex item to grow to fill any available space. So if you have any content in a flex item and you want them to grow to fill any available space, you can use the grow. So let me just show you this practically. So we're going to use the very first item here. As you can see, we still have some space here. This is because the contents in these items can comfortably fit there. But you can come and add a class of grow here, and if I can just come and talk of grow. Okay, so I'm sorry for that. So this is a utility that will work with a Tailwind version 3. So I can just come and talk of grow, and basically what that will do is that it will grow to fill any available space. So previously we had this part here being empty, and so by adding this grow, then it just like increase this in size to be equal to the size of what was remaining at the very end here. So it's just like stretch this to the size equal to what was remaining here, so that now it would accommodate or fill the available space. So basically, as you can see now, what has happened is that we have made this one to grow to fill the available space that was at the very end here. So you can also talk about the don't grow. So the don't grow now, of course, we'll do the reverse of this. And so now what we do is that we just say grow, and then we add a 0. So grow -0, that will just have it in the reverse. Well, so the next utility that I'll be talking about is the initial. So the FlexInitial helps to allow us to make flex items to shrink but not to grow, taking into account their initial size. So say for instance, maybe I come and get rid of this, and maybe I give this certain width. Maybe I can talk of 20, and maybe I can also talk about the flex none, like it should not flex, so flex none. And now we have it like that. Now the second one here, the second item, I can now come and add the class flex. And before we add the flex, maybe we want to first of all have it with some size. So I can talk of a width of maybe 64. So width of 64. And now I can come and talk of FlexInitial. So flex hyphen initial. And now that is what we are going to achieve there. So now if, say for instance, I come and try to add some more content here, let me just try to copy this and duplicate it here. So as you can see now what we have achieved by just doing that, so this item is now some sort of fixed to that specific size, such that it cannot be made to be this next item here cannot steal any pixels from it, so it is just rigid like that. But yet again it cannot grow even if we add some more content to it. Say for instance we come and try to add some more content to it here. Yes, so so as you can see now it is not growing, so it is like staying in that rigid form. So in some situations that is what you may want to achieve in your project, and so all you need to do is to just come and give your item a specific size, that initial size, and also just add now the FlexInitial utility, and you're going to achieve this. So let me just get rid of this excess stuff so that we just have it back to normal. There is also the flip side of this, like you may want this item to grow and shrink at the same time. You may not want it to just be rigid as this one is. So in that case all you need to do is to just come and talk of flex 1. So by adding the flex 1, it allows a flex item to grow and shrink as needed, ignoring its initial size. So in this case we have it with the initial size of 64, but by just adding this, it will now be growing depending on the content that is added there. Yes, and that's what you're going to achieve there, and in most cases this is what you may want, but still the FlexInitial becomes handy in some situations. So now we can get rid of this so that we get it back to normal, so that we can look at the next utility that we'll be talking about. Okay, so other than flex 1, which of course we've said it will allow the flex items to grow and shrink as needed, ignoring the initial size, there is also the flex auto utility that allows a flex item to grow and shrink, taking into account its initial size. So for instance, now if I come and change this to auto, we're going to have it like that. So in this case now it is growing and shrinking, taking into account the initial size of this specific item. So like that. So you may not see that big difference, but it will just help your items to grow and shrink, taking into account the specific specified size. There is also the flex none utility, which prevent a flex item from growing or shrinking. So if I come and change this from auto to none, of course that will make that specific item not to grow and shrink, and it will just be in its initial size. So even if you add any content, any more content in it, it will not grow. There is also the shrink, and the shrink utility allows a flex item to shrink if needed. So I can just come and change this to shrink. So that is shrink. So it will just make it to shrink if it is needed to shrink. So as you can see, it is not growing, but it is in that specific size. There is also the don't shrink. There is also the don't shrink. So if we come and add the don't shrink, in that case we're just going to change this and give it a value of 0. And it's a little bit confusing because you may not see that big difference between the shrink and the don't shrink. They're almost similar in some way. Okay, so that's it with the shrinking. So in that case, we've talked about we've just talked about the grow, the don't grow, the initial utilities, the flex, the auto, the none, the shrink, and the don't shrink, and they just they're just utilities that will just help you to control your content in terms of whether the items or the containers will be growing or not growing, or growing and shrinking all at the same time. Okay, so we now want to move on to the next one, and for that case I'm just going to get rid of this excess stuff here, and also the flex lab. So we have our container now looking like that. So the next utility that I want us to talk about is the order. The order utility helps to control the order of flex and grid items. So this is both the flex and the grid items, and let's just see how that happens. And for that maybe I can also try to get rid of some content, excess content here. So maybe I can get rid of the container because we want some space here a little bit. So yes, we can just have it like that. Let me also get rid of this. Okay, so now we have our work looking a little bit cleaner. So this will help us now to see the next utility, and that is the order. And the order utility helps us to order flex and grid items. So for that case, I can maybe first of all come and add a class here, and I can talk of a justify center. And what the justify, not center but between, what the justify between will do is that it is going to have my items distributed like this. So taking into consideration the available space, and in that case now I can come and talk of now of the order of the specific items, like how I want them to be ordered. So let's say for instance I want this one to be the last one, for instance. So I can just come to it, to that specific item, and talk of order last. So when I talk of order last, as you can see, what will happen is that that specific item now will be the last. It will appear as the last item in this specific area here. So about the order, so if I just come and remove that, so we try to see the available classes or the available that we have, options that we have. So we have order 1, order 2, order 3, order 4, order 5, like that. And this and now there is the order first, order last, and there is also the none, and we've just applied the last. Okay, so that's it with the order. So it just helps you to order your items the way you may want. So the next utility that we're going to talk about is the justify content. The justify content, of course, will help you to control how flex and grid items are positioned along a container's main axis. So having our stuff like this, you can see already we've talked about the the justify between, which will have our items now with this order, or laid out in this order, whereby they are distributed, creating some spaces between them, and that is into consideration with the available space that we have. But still, there is the start utility, which will help to justify items against the start of the container's main axis. And how we can do that is we can just come and maybe first of all we get rid of the order here. We don't need this one anymore. And I can also get rid of the justify between, and instead of justify between, I can talk of justify start. So with the justify start, it will have the items at the start of the container's main axis. So as you can see, it is in the very edge of this specific container. So like they are starting from the very left. You may also want them to be at the center, and this is where the center utility comes in, which will just help to justify items along the center of the container's main axis. So instead of the start, we can talk of center. And so now what that will do is that it is going to have the items aligned at the center, and sometimes that may be what you want, and that's where also you go further and talk about now the space, and maybe we can talk of space 4, and now you're going to have your items now spaced out like that. Okay, so that's it with the justify center. And of course there is the justify end, especially when you are creating a navigation. Justify center is one of the utility that you can use, as well as justify end, where you're going to have your items now appearing at the very end. Yes, like that. So that is again a very useful utility that will come in handy, especially when you want to align your items accordingly. So we also have the space between, and this is a utility that will help to justify items along the container's main axis, such that there is an equal amount of space between each item. So if I come and now talk of the justify between, so this is the one that we had before. So the justify between, so it will just have the items distributed in the available space within the container, creating some equal space between them. So that is again something that you may want to achieve, and that's the utility that you're going to use. There is also the space allowed, and the space allowed just help to justify items along the container's main axis, such that there is an equal amount of space on each side of each item. As you can notice right now with the justify between, we are having the first and the last item at the very edge of the container's axis. Sometimes this is not what you may want. You may want to create some breathing room here. So in that case, instead of justify between, you can talk of justified around, and now that will create the space here and the space here. So that is maybe what you may want to achieve, and that's how you can go about that. There is also the last one, but not the least, the space evenly. And the space evenly utility just help to justify items along the container's main axis, such that there is an equal amount of space allowed each item, but also accounting for the doubling of space that would normally see between each item when using justify around. So it's a little bit confusing, but let's just see it in practice. So instead of around, I can talk of evenly. So it is just like try to make the spacing to be equal, to be even. So I can talk of evenly, yes, like that. So it is now trying to also have some space along the edges of the container, just like with the space allowed, but also it is taking into account the doubling of space that we would normally see between each item when using the justify around. So it is also taking into account this space, such that the space I think the space that we have here is equal to the space that we have here. So with the justify around, if we may get back to that, it is just creating a space. Okay, and as you can see, this space is not equal to this space. So if you may want to have it in such that the space between this and this item is equal to the space between the first item and the axis and the last item and the axis. So instead of around, you can talk of evenly, and this now will first of all check to see the space that we'll have here, and while applying this space it will take into consideration that space, and that's what it is going to apply there. So that's it with the spacing. So there is the space evenly, there is a space allowed, there is a space between, yes, and also we have now the justifying, where we are having the start, the center, and the end. So remember, you have to start with justify end, justify start, justify center. And so lastly, we are going to talk about the line items utilities, and the line items utilities just help to control how flex and grid items are positioned along a container's axis. And to help us with that, let me first of all maybe get rid of this, and I'm going to take one of my containers here and give it a height. Say for instance this one, so I give it a height of say 40. So I'm going to have it like that. As you can see now, the height has been applied to all of them, so all of them sort of grew to that to respect that specific height. But now when I come to the parent div here and start adding the items, you're now going to see that my items now, it's only the second one that has the height that is respecting that height, and the rest are just staying as they should. And here you see that we have the utility item start. So if I click on that, then that's what we are going to achieve. So we're going to have these items now being at the start or at the top of this specific item here. So in some cases this is what you may want, but still you may want them to be aligned at the center, so you can talk of center. So now you're going to have them at the center of this specific item here. And also, although mine is a little bit wrong, that is too long, or yes, in terms of height, yes, so maybe you're not going to have this, but this just for illustration. You can also talk about the end, and in this case now you're just going to have them at the very end here. So let me just come and change this from center and have it with end, and you're just going to have it at the very end there. So if maybe I can just come and make this 14. So in some cases what you're going to maybe intend to have in your project maybe is the center, so that you have it centered like that, but still depending on what you are creating, you can have it being at the start, at the end, or just like we are talking about here at the center. There is also the baseline. So we use the baseline items or utility to align items along the container's cross axis, such that all of the baselines align. So maybe this is what you may want to achieve. So I can come and talk about the baseline. So you're just having all your containers now are running, so they are at the same line, they are along the same line like that. So again, depending on what you are creating, that is what you may want to achieve. So those are some of the common utilities that you'll be using in Tailwind or in Tailwind. I don't know why I call it Tailwind. I think it is Tailwind. So those are some of the utilities that you can use in Tailwind. Remember, there is the version 3 which has more utilities, and it is making our work even to become more easier when it comes to styling our websites. So I may also recommend you to check out what's new in the new version in Tailwind version 3. So check out that, and I hope it will help you to create your next big project within the shortest time possible. So I think we're just going to end this video at that very point. I hope the video was insightful. If it was insightful, kindly leave a comment below. Tell me what next you may want me to cover in regards to Tailwind CSS. Subscribe if you have not subscribed to this channel. See you in the next one, and as usual, take care.